How are you all? My name is Nicole Yvonne, and this is Healing on the Mat. I thank you for being here. As you all know, if you've been following, we have been going over a book called Her Rights by Christy Angel Bowman. If you are new, you need to go back and watch the first two videos. But Her Rights is about women empowerment, women finding their birthright, because typically in the Bible, men are given the birthright. But as I say, most of these lessons can still apply to men, especially men of ethnicity and of diversity, because hey, they are not always given a birthright as well. So we have been through rite of birth and we have went through rite of initiation. Today we are up to rite of exile, and what we learn here is that we all have moments of exile. We all have our exile periods where we have to face some hard realities and grow up. We have to learn who we are without the voice of the outside world, without the voice of our parents, primarily for women without the voice of our mothers. But I'm sure there are a lot of men who have to drown out the voice of controlling fathers as well, or controlling mothers. But we learn these periods and it becomes difficult stages of life where we have to embrace us. And these can come multiple times. Why are we talking about it? Because the sooner you realize that you're in a moment of exile, the sooner you pay attention to it and do what needs to be done, do the work, the more you'll learn, the more you'll grow, the faster you will recuperate, and the more you won't have to be stuck in the wilderness again, at least for not as long, normally typically moving further. So a lot of times we might find this in our teenage years. We are moving up to that solar plexus because this is your individuality. This is you finding yourself. This is you learning who you are. And so a lot of times in our teenage years, we grapple with it, and it's very difficult because it's all these new emotions. We're trying to figure out how to be an individual. We might have parents constantly telling us what to do. It may even be in our early adult years, but typically this is also when you leave high school and you go off into the world, whether that be college, whether that be life. But to my young people who may hopefully be listening, you learn to embrace those moments and figure it out. And yes, in the wilderness, you can become a wild child. So I'm not telling you not to live your early 20s as free as you can, but just be safe and just think about some of the choices that you make when that happens, because a lot of times in the exile period we become angry and we don't process the grief that we might be experiencing. We don't process the anger that we might be experiencing, and we turn into this person that we don't want to be. And I talked about that in a different video, but it is still learning. It is still growth. And so if you end up there, dust the dirt off your shoulder and get back up and let yourself know that you learned a lesson, that you are growing and you are moving forward. But when we get into adulthood, we typically also learn the exile when divorce happens. We learn the exile, for example, in the book, she learned her exile when they had to make a big move. I forgot where they moved to, but she lived in Seattle. And when she had to move with her family to a different part of the country, she hated it. And that became her exile period. She had her family around her. Her husband did everything that he could to help her with digesting why it was bothering her so much. She did not want to move. Her husband was very excited about the move. So the whole entire move, she's crying. She can't hide it from her kids. Every time they get to a hotel to stop before they keep trudging toward the destination, she's crying in the shower. And she realizes that in this moment, she is alone. Yes, there are people surrounding her, but she is alone and she's going to have to figure this out for herself. When I started realizing before I got divorced in my marriage that I can't control every situation, I can't make somebody act the way that I want to, I can't make somebody move and operate the way that I want them to, is when I realized that I was kind of in my exile period and I had to grow on my own. I had to figure some things out on my own. When you leave the house and you move into your own place, or you start standing on your own feet, there are a lot of things that take place that you just have to sit with for some time. And so she says, one of the things that she asked is, why wouldn't he rescue me? Talking about God. Why wouldn't he rescue me? This is A common question for our Creator during our rites of exile: why don't you rescue me, God? And God wants you to figure it out. One, I say as a believer, He wants you to spend some time with Him. He wants you to get to know Him, because the more you get to know Him, the more you will get to know you. But a lot of times we're caught up in the material world. We're caught up with everybody else. I am a person that loved having people in my circle. I loved having family around. I love having friends. I was always scheduling the events and making sure that we could get together and make sure that we had camaraderie. But when I went through my divorce, it left me in a period of exile where I had to get comfortable with myself. And, there's a reason and a season. Some of those people are no longer in my life. Some people have circled back around. And so it's not to say that those others won't come back full circle, when the time is right. But I had to figure some things out for myself. And now I am a person who likes to be individually. I like to be by myself. Do I want companionship? Yes, but I like being by myself. The thing is, you have to figure out your identity in order to figure out your place within the community. And any of you all that say that you just love isolation, trust me, I get it. But a little bit of that is hurt and trauma, because when we look at the body keeps the score, we find that if you go to a pet store, I've mentioned this in a few videos before, and you look at the sections, you look at the reptile section, reptiles are isolated. They're by themselves. They are cold-blooded. They sit in corners, don't want to be connected to one another. Whereas when you look at the puppy section, they're all over each other. And yes, some may fight sometimes. Some may be trying to fight for their rank. But at the end of the day, they're playful and they're together and they want community. Well, we are mammals. We are not reptiles. And so we should naturally want community. If we look at The Garden Within, that is another book that teaches us about mental health, but about how the body works like plant life. And I'm listening to Celestine Prophecy right now, and I just got over the section of energy. And so when we look at plants, they work together. They are communal. Older plants help nurture growth for younger plants. I think I talked about that in the previous video, but I'm going to read this little section. In the desert, we first confront the voice of our mothers, the internal critic of how things should be. We also remember the mother figure and our physical mothers, aunties, tias, grandmothers, and sisters. Their mothering can be heard down deep within us. This is good to know, because this is how you still let somebody's legacy live on. I know the Bible may say, let the dead rest. You do let them rest, but I depended on my great grandmother a lot. I think she has taught me more in her death than she did when she was alive. And so their mothering can be heard deep within our souls. In solitude, we often hear the biological mother's voice the loudest. Maternal comfort does not equip us to survive severe loneliness. We learn resilience in the wild, not nursing at the breast. In exile, we need a voice that understands the wilderness. If we cannot confront and silence the voice of the mother, we can listen to another, the voice of the wild woman. The wild woman's voice is intuitive and often heard behind our rib cage and called within our and cradled within our pelvic floor. As we wander through exile, we will hear all the voices and visit with them until we hear our own internal voice wrangling them into submission. Exile is the gift of isolation. When we stay in exile long enough, we begin to hear our real voice. All the mean and accusing voices we first heard settle, and we hear a more honorable voice of our own. Exile is the rebirth and abandonment, giving each woman a choice to choose herself, being alone long enough to give birth and embrace your true voice as a gift. And this is something that we need to do, because a lot of times when we are in the exile period, we're running. When we get divorced, I had to sit by myself, and I'm still sitting by myself. I'm still single. There's still a lot to process. There's still a lot of work to be done. I know that. Why? Because even though I feel like I'm ready for a relationship, I'm still in this space. So that while I'm here, there's still something to learn. There's still work to be done. There's still things that I have to master and conquer in that time. But it says exile always ends when we find the gift in it. And so that lets me know I still got some work to do, right? But I don't feel lonely. I told you all I travel by myself. I've traveled out of the country the past few years by myself, solo, and I was not scared. I was not fearful that something would happen to me. I had to pick safe places to go, but God got my back. And I have such an energy and a light that carries with me that the enemy will flee. And I believe that truly. So I want you all to understand that in this exile period, there is work to be done. I think I was going to say before that, like, a lot of times we get divorced or we get out of relationships and we just on to the next one. And everybody else is the problem, and we don't hone in on us. And it doesn't mean that we're problems. It doesn't mean that we're problematic. Sometimes it means that we don't know ourselves. Sometimes it means that we're trying to meet other people's expectations. Sometimes it means that we need to ground ourselves. But sometimes it does mean that, honey, you are the problem, and there is work to be done for you. Honey, I mean male and female. And you need to work on yourself, but take that as a cue to do the work. Take that as a cue to get through the shadow work. If you're journaling through the shadow work, then, write down why you don't want to feel lonely. Write down what you've been through in life that makes you feel that way. But also write down the voices that you're hearing in your head from everybody else that is preventing you from being your most authentic self. That's pretty much it for that. Y'all grab y'all blocks and get to this mat, because we are about to do this routine in order to make sure that we have a yoga lesson that aligns with this lesson. Until next time, y'all, keep inhaling life, exhaling death, and honey, I will see you on the flip side.